Okay, welcome into the shop. Quick intro to this video. I got to give some context to what's going on. If you haven't watched the previous video, it'll help do that because it kind of goes through the actual build and then where it went wrong. In this video, we're correcting a lot of mistakes. So for those of you who have no clue what's going on, I built a circular bench for a condo in a downtown building in Austin. And I made an error in that build and went to install it, and the back was too tall. And the client didn't like it. So I brought the back to the shop. I brought the shelf that goes on top of the back as well. And then in this video, we're gonna cut that down and face some more challenges and deal with some more problems and get through this and finish it. This is what the bench looked like before it left Austin after I tried to install it the first time. And so we're gonna start right now into this build, into this correction with me cutting down the back. And then working through that back shelf is going to have to be rebuilt because the back has a slope to it. And so as you cut that back down, it gets further down into the slope and gets wider. So we got to make a new back to accommodate the more width. And so we'll be doing that as well. So let's just jump in, get started. And I'll probably chime in a few times as we go because I'm going to run into some more issues as I'm doing this. It's amazing how when a project starts to kind of go south a little bit, just the problems start piling up. It's like a snowball effect. I don't know. There's just like some larger force at work that wants to make everything go wrong. And we're going to see a lot of that in this video. So let's just jump in and get started. there. Oh, I got it right here. Oh, I knew that was gonna happen. Too much force. Son of a gun, I broke that.
Ah!
Okay, a quick explanation of what just happened, because you can tell I'm a little frustrated. This here is called a domino. That is what I put in that shelf at every joint to help not only strengthen it, but just align it for glue up. And it also makes it easier to glue it because it holds that joint together. I had thought that I planned these out. I had thought about it in advance, laid everything out, and had tried to put these inside the shelf so that when I cut, I wouldn't cut through one. Well, I just realized on the bandsaw that I cut right through one of these. And as you can tell, these are, I think these are like beech or birch or something. These are not walnut. So obviously cannot have that. So this is a new problem I've created that I have to correct. And that's why I'm frustrated, because it's just, like I said earlier in the beginning of this video, this just keeps adding on, snowballing and snowballing. This wasn't the only issue. I didn't share all of them, but this is one of the big ones. So what I'll end up doing here now is we'll get this top shelf fitted, get it dialed in. One thing we're changing on this, the previous shelf was, I left overhang on the previous shelf off the front of the bench seat, the back. That gave me a little bit of adjustment and play to get it up against the concrete and not be off of the back. So it just allowed for some margin of error. And the client didn't really like that, because when you lean back on it, you hit that. And I honestly can't fault them for that. I kind of agree. I just was hoping that it was high enough, because that bench was higher at the time, that it wouldn't affect your back, and it would just make it way easier for me to get it fitted on site. But now that the back is lower, way lower, we have to make that back fit nice and almost flush to the veneered back, which is super challenging. So I'm going to work on that here in this part of the video, and then we'll correct these by basically routing these out and putting walnut ones in their place. just right here. Oh, I got that little curve there. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. You can see that back. I've pretty much got it laid out. A couple other things I did is I shortened the depth of the middle divider so that didn't stick out quite as far, and I made the table down lower. So you see how I cut that in the very beginning of the video. Table sits right above the cushion. There's a 4-inch cushion, so instead of being up high, where I was thinking more elbow height, it is now really down low. Which is something the client wanted, and it was actually drawn that way, so it's entirely on me for not building it that way. As I was building it and designing it from the very beginning, and I'd explained this in the first video, and something in my head was telling me I needed to change it, and that was really the big mistake I made. From here, okay, this would be about a week and a half after my first initial install that went south. So I drove back down to Austin with the lower back. I finished everything, got it all looking nice, went back down there, got the back installed, got the seat all mounted up to the column, the concrete column, got everything in place, worked for a while, put the top shelf on that we just made, and it was really, I was crossing my fingers because I don't obviously have that pillar on site or in the shop so that I can fit perfect. So I have to just hope that I've got it right. And since I don't have any overhang on that shelf, it needs to sit flush to the back and right on the concrete. It pretty much has to be about as perfect as you can get it. There was about a 7/16 gap on one side that I didn't like it that much. I kind of wanted it to be okay, obviously, because I'd already been through so much. The client immediately picked up on it, didn't like it. One of the big problems with it is you could see down through that gap and see the Tapcon. That was one of the bolts that was holding it to the concrete. So I end up coming back, that's Thursday, I drive back, I bring that half of the shelf with me because I'm gonna remake it, make it a little bit wider to fill that 1/2-inch gap. And so when I built that, you remember earlier in the video, I cut it in half with the handsaw. So I built it all as one piece, cut it in half, so that way I had a nice grain flow at that joint, and it looks really clean. And so in an effort to keep that, when I brought that half back, I actually made a copy of it, a plywood copy, using a flush trimming bit. And then I cut it at the first joint over from the middle so I could preserve that piece that's the grain match and add to it. So each side had 3 pieces, and so I just had to add 2 pieces. This is probably hard to follow, but essentially what I'm trying to do is keep the original grain flow so that when I go put this new shelf back in, to the other shelf, there's still pretty grain flow and it's not this crazy ugly transition. So I added that piece on, reshaped it, added about heavy 3/8 of material where that gap was. I didn't want to go all the way to 7/16 because I was a little bit worried that might push it out too much and get it off the bench back. So I gave myself a little bit of wiggle room, got that done Friday. The client was nice enough to allow me to drive down that Saturday morning early and finish the job. Was able to get that shelf. It was a lot to tweak. Was able to push that bench side in a little bit. I made a little piece of trim to cover the side gap, and I got the gap down to just maybe a heavy 1/8 on that concrete, which honestly, I don't know if I could do any better than that. So as I was thinking through this, trying to decide how could I do this, because I was off-site, it was really hard to take it down there and scribe it to that concrete pillar. I could have left more material on the back of that and gone and worked it to fit the concrete, but I just don't know in my head how I would actually do that and do it easily. I don't really have a good place to work. You're up in a high-rise building, so I don't know. This is an interesting one. I don't know what I would change to make this easier the second go around. If you guys got any ideas, any woodworkers that follow me, any thoughts on how you might approach this job and deal with getting that fit off-site and bringing it to fit perfectly so you don't have to scribe and fit it in place. One thing I did do is the column was 34.5 in diameter. I built the bench at a 34.75 diameter, so slightly bigger, because my thought process was like, well, if I'm too small, it's going to be much harder to get it on. as opposed to being much bigger, I can at least get it wrapped around the column and get it on there. But that's probably where my gap started, because this is a concrete column. There's a good chance that it could have been a little bit less than 34.5. It's a good chance it was in a perfect circle. It might be a little bit of an oval shape. So there's just a lot there to try to manage, a lot of unknowns. So definitely one of those jobs that I'll rethink if it comes around in the future, which I doubt. I'll have, this is so custom, I probably will never do one like this again. But I'll never forget it, that's for sure. It doesn't have the cushions on it, so when you see these final videos and pictures, just remember it's still missing a 4-inch cushion all the way around, which will really bring it all together. All in all though, fun job, hard job. I learned a lot. Probably added a few gray hairs to my head. At this point, it doesn't matter anymore because there's so many. And I'm just glad it's behind me and I can move on. We've got some exciting builds coming your way. I've got a 25-foot long dining room table. It's going to be amazing. I'll be starting that up soon. I got a real classic traditional table that I'm excited to build, and a few other small things in the book. So let's move past this one. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about how you would approach it. If there's a better way, maybe I'm missing something on describing that to the concrete pillar. And I look forward to seeing those comments, and we'll see you on the next video.
Yeah, but I was also